Okay, and there we
Yeah,
are.
we're started.
Great. Taffy, you'd like me to jump in? Did we lose Taffy?
I think we did.
Okay. Give her a second to get back in. You all set, Taffy?
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Oh boy.
I'm here. Carry on
hear
without
us?
me. If I might have a Wi-Fi issue, but if I drop off, just carry on. Here I am.
All right. All right. Well, listen, we have a good agenda for you today, a lot of information, and we, at this time of year, will typically bring some new ideas, new course proposals to you. November, December is really that time, and we have some exciting new courses. Mike Aikenhead is here to talk about a sustainability course proposal, which is probably the first of its kind in the area at any of the high schools. I mean, we've searched around, and we think this is unique to Weston. So we'll talk about that. And then Kate O'Keefe from our art department. She's our art CIL, first year in that role this year, but a longtime member of the department. You've probably seen some of her artwork, her own personal artwork, as well as her students around the high school. She's an accomplished artist herself, and she'll be here to talk about a new course proposal as well, which we think will really benefit the department. So we'll get into that, and then Dan Doak will talk about this is second of an ongoing conversation regarding middle school teaming. And then I have a couple informational items, and I know we wanted to leave about 10 minutes at the end. Taffy, you wanted to flag some social emotional questions in anticipation for the December meeting.
Yes.
So sound like a plan?
Yeah.
All right. So Mike, I know you're prepared with, and I know Jamie's here as CIL, and Julie's here from the high school to also supplement as we go. So one last thing is, we bring new course proposals to you. We are conscious of the fact that we look to see where the ebb and flow might be within our courses, so that we can provide hopefully staffing neutral options. We know sometimes some courses get sunsetted or get impacted by new courses. We think both of these proposals we're bringing forward are staffing neutral, with some minimal materials, equipment costs that would naturally go along with a new course. But that I think is important to keep in mind, and we can talk more about that with each proposal. So with that, Mike, let's hear about this sustainability course.
Sure thing. So I think most of you have seen the draft of the proposal. I sort of developed this idea as an opportunity to bring together just a bunch of great opportunities that are going to check off a number of boxes for the district and for students. So I kind of looked at the current social climate, and obviously this particular subject is very timely. And just in teaching my own courses, we often tend to address sort of the issues with the environment and how natural systems work, but there's very little time to really actually address how do we solve these problems or approach solutions to these problems. So just over the years teaching this topic, that's been an interest expressed to me by students. Within the district, obviously the sustainability policy, the district-wide policy just passed, and there's really sort of an interest in pursuing more sustainability initiatives, but I've just sort of found it sometimes difficult figuring out how to make those things a reality. So I also looked around at some of the resources the school has. So it's just sort of serendipitous, I guess, but my room is sandwiched between the greenhouse, the garden, there's a workshop next door, and then we have this patch of natural forest right behind my classroom, which are all just sort of a natural fit for different kinds of projects and opportunities that these kids could tackle. And I came from Staples earlier, where I taught a horticulture class, and I know the garden here is a little bit currently underserved. And I know in my time there, kind of doing it piecemeal through a club setting wasn't quite enough. So I thought to myself, well, could we develop a course that would deal with the garden and some other things? But then it sort of evolved into this, well, what if we did a full sustainability class that could really address many of the sustainability problems that this school might want to address? And then also create a learning opportunity for the kids where it is truly problem-based teaching, where we're not just sort of coming up with hypothetical, how would we possibly deal with this? There are real world challenges in the school and in the community that we can present to these kids, and they are going to come up with the solutions in real time. And I can't really think of a better way to teach, those sorts of problem solving skills that are so important to what we're really trying to get across to our students these days. What comes to mind is the Portrait of a Graduate. Pretty much all the focus of that project or that culminating experience is encapsulated in a course like this, where they're thinking creatively, they're working in groups, they're problems. I mean, just across the board, this class would hit all those topics. So yeah, it's just
what grade was it for, Mike?
So I'm thinking this would be ideal for juniors and seniors. My original thinking was, again, I had many students who've gone through either standard or AP who are like, well, what's next? I mean, I want to now solve this stuff. So this kind of seemed like a good extension of that pathway. But at the same time, I know there's probably a lot of students who are interested in these topics. And if they had to choose between standard environmental and what's covered there, this might be a more appealing path. Where, quite frankly, I mean, you think of a lot of adults, even in town, who are interested in sustainable action. This is almost a course that would teach and cover how you live a more sustainable life. Everything from, your food choices to how you might build your house one day to where you get your energy, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think there might be more of an appeal for some students to learn those things. Versus another route.
Michael, I have is this like a follow-on? I mean, I think I looked at the proposal.
Yep.
I think it's awesome. Is this a follow-on to as a more advanced course? Because or is this one of its kind?
I think it's one of its kind. So again, I could see students in my AP class doing this as a natural extension, but at the same time, a standard level student or whatever that hasn't had that depth in an AP could also definitely value. In fact, some of those students might even benefit more from this class and thrive in it because, I don't foresee this being an examination-based sort of course. It's like we're going to do projects. We're actually going to be doing physical work. And I've had students in my standard class where sometimes at the end of the year, I'll do a big hands-on sort of engineering type project. And kids who kind of flounder throughout most of the year, suddenly like they're in their element and they're building and you could see like the engineering wheels going off in their head. And so this class would also lend itself to them. So I wouldn't say it's more advanced, but it's a very different approach that could lend itself to many different academic styles.
So it'd be open to any 11th or 12th grader. AP,
yeah, we discussed that. Again, it was originally thought of as a natural progression for kids who wanted to take the next step after environmental. But we also realized this could just be a pathway for many students who gravitate towards this style of learning.
Okay, so that's my question. So the initial intent was that this would be a follow-on course to a student who took the environmental.
Yes, but we don't think it needs to be. This could be in lieu of environmental, like in lieu of standard environmental, a kid could also take this course.
And is this course, and one of the things I always kind of wonder in Weston and quite frankly, a lot of the schools in our area, we've sort of taken out a lot of the more, I don't want to say vocational, but vocational style classes. Yep. So is there an element to this course that could also be appealing to a student who may say, you know what, going on to an Ivy League or four-year college is not interesting to me because I want to get into a vocational. So they're
100%.
Yeah,
that's kind of what this is. I mean,
okay.
I don't know if you guys know my background, but in addition to teaching in Westport, I ran an educational farm for 8 years. And it was sort of that experience of having kids use like, a screw gun for the first time.
Yeah.
And they light up and they suddenly realize like I'm capable of doing things I never thought I would ever do. And again, sort of projects in the garden or just stuff in this back forest behind me. I really picture it being this sort of hands-on vocational type of experience, in addition to the academic piece, like understanding these sustainability issues.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the vocational aspect is what's lacking in a lot of schools.
And again,
Mike,
sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
And again, I just don't, it's just sort of this melding of the perfect situation to have access to a workshop right next door, where kids could maybe tinker around with like building a simple compost bin or something. The resource is already there. You know what I'm saying? So it's not something we need to create. In order
Mike, if you need additional resources, you know that my husband and I run Homefront Farmers, which is we have an 11-acre farm in Reading. Just write it down. Homefront Farmers. We build organic vegetable gardens around Fairfield County, and we have an 11-acre farm where we experiment on a lot of things like growing mushrooms and all that stuff.
Awesome.
So you and I should talk, and it can absolutely be an outing if you need to get off the campus and bring people to a farm. Let's talk about that.
Oh my gosh, that sounds perfect.
Sounds fabulous. I want to take the course. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Because I think this is. The only question I had was, is it a full semester? I was looking at the write up, and a full year or a semester?
Yeah, this was part of the discussion as well. In terms of the growing cycle, when I taught horticulture before, it was 2 semesters, and it was a disaster. Kids were watching plants die, or they were planting stuff and never seeing it sort of grow.
Right.
In that element. Plus, a lot of the projects we're hoping to do really are going to go through a long-term cycle where I'm actually hoping for them to try and source, grants or funding to help, do some of the projects. And quite frankly, those things take almost a full year cycle. There's also environmental competitions and whatnot that follow the full year cycle. So for me, seeing it to really be as powerful an experience for the kids as it could be, I see it being a full year class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we talked a great deal about that. The semester class has some constraints when you are growing, in the garden or in the greenhouse. So for kids to see the full cycle, that was something we talked about. This is not the one thing. It's a full year course, but unlike biochemistry, physics, it's a non-lab course in the sense that it wouldn't have that double period, right? So the course would not fulfill a student's lab requirement for science. Correct, Julie? And how many years, Julie? Is it 3 or is it 2? It's 3, right?
It's 3 credits in science, 2 of them as a lab science.
Does the lab have to be inside the school, or can the lab be in a mushroom fruiting room? Can the lab be in a sugar shack? Can the maple sugar shack? Can the lab be in a greenhouse?
So I think that the concept of the lab is a structural component, right? It's a scheduling component. I think in terms of what Mike is planning, and I won't speak for him, but I'll say, we're open to all kinds of ideas, because really the heart of this is experiential learning. So where does the learning best take place? I think that's going to be sort of organic, pardon the use of the term, based on kind of what's happening, right? What are the things that are happening right now? What's needed? And the curriculum may shift as a result of, the moment and the students who are in the course.
Yep.
We felt the trade-off would be, instead of a half year, if we didn't do the extra lab period, it would still make it accessible, so it wouldn't influence students' schedules as much, and they could still take the full year class. Anyway.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I look forward to hearing more.
Awesome.
So
that sounds terrific. I love the real world problem-based aspect of it. It just seems like it lends itself to so much interdisciplinary work as well. Have you given any thought to other subjects that you might be able to coordinate with or work with?
Yeah. And of course, as you're saying, it's going to incorporate elements of almost every subject. I mean, I almost see kids doing sort of advertising campaigns and stuff to get funding, like whatever. But I'm actually working closely with Andy George. He's now the co-advisor of Green Team, and he's in the social studies department. So we've already started to work those synergies as well. So I'm sure that will come out of this course also, like those types of cross-disciplinary opportunities.
And I can see Kate's wheels turning while we're talking. So
I love the passion I can just see in Michael's face at the opportunity to offer this course. I mean, I agree with Taffy. I'd love to be able to sit on the course myself, and I know nothing about farming, but you would make it very interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. All right, I know you have an upcoming class, so we'll let you go, and we will move on to another performance-based course.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
Jamie,
Thanks,
you're
Mike.
welcome to stay too if you'd like, but I know you may have another meeting or class to get to. So Kate, we're going to talk about the, I think first you're going to give a brief overview with a one-page document of the course offerings in art and to situate where this course lands, this new course called Digital Illustration and Animation. So June, if Kate can have the ability to share screen. Do you have it there, Kate, or do you need us to share it?
I have it. She gave it to me already.
Okay.
So let me just present.
Perfect.
All right. Can you all see that now? All right. So if we want to look under the media arts, that yellow box right in the center, that shows the flow of a lot of our digital art courses. The new course proposal is the digital illustration and animation course. The prereq for that would be CMD, which is contemporary media design. It's a course where students are really using a lot of the Adobe suite for the very first time. So by having that strong basis with the Adobe suite, they can then move on to this digital illustration animation course. I've seen a need for this. I teach a lot of the upper level courses, the advanced drawing, AP Studio Art and Studio Art. And a lot of our kids are already doing this on their own. They're using their tablets, their iPads to create digital drawings and paintings and animated graphics with free online software. And I think there's a really strong need for us to give them that foundation, because I do have a lot of students who move on in college and take this as their career path. And it's a growing industry. There's a lot of opportunities for students to become animators, illustrators, graphic designers. They can work in the film industry, video. There's just a ton of opportunities for this outside of Weston High School.
Kate, so this what does this replace? So if you could just explain that.
I'm sorry. This will replace Advanced CMD, which was the course that was offered after. The pathway within that course included web design. I just see a need to really focus on the digital illustration and animation. So students would be creating digital drawings and paintings. We'd really focus on how the traditional media relates within the new media. They'd also be creating like their own environments. We focus on like things like perspective within the new media. This would relate to like if they were going into like game design, or if they were going into like an animation field.
Can you talk to, it's a semester course,
Yes.
and equipment materials needed to facilitate this course? If you could talk
Yep,
to
it
that.
would be a semester course. There is a little price tag on the class. We have 7 drawing tablets right now within the course. I'd like to make a full set. So there is an equipment request. I know we do have it in the budget, I believe, Julie, for the course, but we're also talking to Dan DeVito to see if we can include it in the IT budget as well.
So you're talking about some additional tablets. We've listed on this document at a cost of $10,000. We're looking for ways to mitigate that if they're, if we, currently are able to identify some within district, or, obviously it's at least in the budget up front that we propose with this course. So Kate, what else? Anything else in terms of the course before we ask for questions?
I don't think so.
I just want to add, if I can, I think everyone knows we have a very strong media component to our visual art program, a lot of course offerings and various levels of those courses. We also have a robust 2D program. And I think what Kate and I are looking to do here is to develop ways to have cross connections between the two. So where do our 2D students, our traditional drawing and painting students, have crossover and opportunity to develop skills in media arts? And how do we pull some of those students who are entering into sort of the media arts skills into those 2D foundations, so that artists coming out of Weston High School have a well-rounded sense of the skills that they can use going into various studies and careers following Weston High School. So I think in terms of what you're looking at, we're looking at how does the progression exist within each media area, but then what are also the opportunities for students really to make connections between, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's only, you're only as people will say, wow, you're a great photographer. You must have a really good camera. Well, like the technical ability is really only as good as your artistic ability, right? And your eye. So I think, crossing over between the 2D foundational stuff, as you described, and the ability to then translate that into digital media is really critical. So I think this is, the $10,000 price tag is obviously comes with it because it is a, digital medium and you can't do it without those pieces. But if you guys can get creative about different ways of finding that, maybe there's some art grants, or maybe there's, just to look outside the box as well as within the budget.
We've definitely done that in the past. We've utilized Weston Arts, the Education Foundation, even the PTO for purchases like that in the past.
Yeah.
So.
Or even share it around, and have a little bit from each for this. But I absolutely see the value in it, and I think it's where we're headed.
Yeah, we definitely need to move in this direction.
Yeah.
As far as the
Sorry, I just want to add, and Taffy, I appreciate your point. I do want to underscore the notion, though, that if we're putting a new course forward and we're seeing this as a need within the department, that there is a responsibility to provide the instructional tools for the course, right? And those tablets are really the textbook for this course.
That's right.
So how are we as the district supporting this new course? Yes, there is a cost to it. And I appreciate that we do have to investigate other areas for funding. I just want to make sure that we're thinking about this tablet, this equipment request as truly a necessary component of the instruction of the course.
I completely agree. And I didn't mean to sort of characterize it as just, a fluffy add-on. It's critical. And not only that, it needs to be sustained over time. It's not necessarily a one-year thing. So it's just like any other computers that we're using in our system. So I understand that. I always think we need to think creatively about how to bring in additional funds, maybe even, Julie, maybe even just for this initial year, because you have to sort of have a proof point, right? So you get creative, you find the funds, and you do amazing things. And then it becomes, a permanent part of the budget moving forward. But I have no problem, searching for that within the budget as well.
I have a question on the cost. I agree with Taffy and what Julie said about it's a cost like a textbook would be. Is 17, I saw that the request would be for 17. Yeah. Is that based on enrolling 17 students?
That's based on what we've run the enrollment for those courses in the past. We only have 7 tablets right now, and that does not equal out to every student within the course being able to utilize that technology while instruction is happening.
So would you, I guess the basis of my question is 17 enough, or do you need 20, for example? If you enroll 17 students and one of the tablets are down, what are we looking at as far as
the 17 would give us over a full class set. So that would be enough for us to get started enrolling with the course.
Okay. And these,
Right. So that give us 24, right?
Yes.
okay. And then we'll have to find out. I don't think that there's much on day-to-day support of those devices, but probably a proactive replacement plan. It's one of those things that, as Taffy was sort of alluding to, it's not a one-time purchase. It's something that, but if you get 2 or 3, I don't know what the lifespan of these devices are, but you figure probably 2 or 3 years at most. So it's a recurring cost.
Right. Yes, we've already spoken with Dan DeVito about how this could work into his long-term technology plan. So he definitely has some thoughts on that.
Great.
Okay. All right. And Kate, I think in the 2D art offerings, you were just going to highlight for next year how we're doing a little consolidation of the drawing and painting in the program of studies. I think it's important to highlight that because you're allowing students to more easily move through the pathways with an adjustment to your offerings. So if you could, it's not no new course proposals, but just talk about how that's going to work.
So my thought process is to try to really streamline the 2D offerings. We were kind of bursting at the seams with the amount of courses that we had underneath that umbrella. Students definitely do not have enough time to move through that pathway to get to that AP level. So by consolidating drawing and painting into the 2 sections, so it'd be drawing and painting 1, and then drawing and painting 2. So effectively in those courses, students would be doing a quarter of drawing and then a quarter of painting. And from there, they would move on to studio art and then into the AP studio art. So it just makes a more sustainable flow for our students who are overscheduled and sometimes over-enrolled in courses.
Right, because currently you have drawing 1 separate from drawing 2 and painting 1 separate from painting 2. And it takes students a long time to get through the progression to get to those higher level courses. So this allows them more flexibility for their, I would say they get their foundational drawing and painting and then get to the electives more easily. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
And Julie, the program of studies, just highlight that goes out at what time and how that process works.
Sure. So the program of studies is edited during the month of December for dissemination early in the new year. And that's when the course request process begins for the following school year. So in very early January, both the program of studies with the complete descriptions of all courses that we plan to offer, including any new courses, goes out to students and families, as well as the academic pathways document. This slide that you're looking at is sort of similar to what that has been in the past, to show in a visual way the progression of courses within each department. That document goes out as well in preparation for students to begin choosing their courses for the following year. Students do their course requests by end of January and then meet with their counselors at the high school during the month of February. Incoming 9th graders follow on in that process not long after, so most of their scheduling meetings are completed by the end of March, and then we sort of go from there looking at requests and sections and all the rest. So we would be looking to update our current program of studies and academic pathways within the next month or so.
And this process of looking at potential new ideas, new courses, we're still in discussion. We may have another course in December to bring to you, where we're kind of meeting with the SILs and the high school to see if what emerges. But right now, these 2 courses, the next step, the sustainability and the digital illustration, we would bring to the December Board of Ed meeting for, I would call it like a final read, a approval by the board. It does not bind you into necessarily any financial obligations because, the budget process is just that. You can approve a course, funding the courses, like for example, with the equipment, we may be looking at alternative ways, but obviously we're going to need that for this course to run. Again, those 2 separate things, the budgeting piece versus, the approval of the course. So we'll look for this. We'll try to get this on the agenda for December, these two courses, and go from there.
Great.
This is Tony. Let me, can I just
I'm looking at the
say one thing about the budgeting process? I mean, approval of the course by the board, obviously, and submission of the course, as a new course by the administration actually shows a prioritization to make sure that this gets funded as part of the budget process, right? So usually when a new course is approved, we just need to make sure the resources that are required to run that course are in the budget. But I can't think of a time when a new course was approved and the resources weren't approved as part of the budget.
You're correct, Tony. And then going back even further, probably than your tenure, I can't remember a time either. We may look for alternative ways to support it, but certainly anytime we've supported a new course, we've figured out a way to handle the resources needed. Okay.
I just had a quick question about the media arts offering, looking at all of these great classes that you have up there in total. When students graduate, they go to an art school, or they go to a school where they want to move into the industry. It seems like, straight animation, it's like animation, for example, is a pathway, but a lot of them get into it from a production management perspective, or there's also a piece of computer science programming that can help them get their foot in the door. Is there any thought of incorporating those kind of concepts into the art program, or partnering with other departments that do that kind of stuff for a little bit more hit the ground running readiness?
I think that's a really great point, and I think it's something that we definitely need to consider. Interdisciplinary connections are so important at this level, just for students to see that, it's not just an art course. It can also, you have elements of like coding and engineering in a lot of these art courses. So I think that's a great point, and it's something that we definitely need to consider in the future.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Kate. You can look for this course to go on the board agenda, and we'll keep you posted. And
thank you.
If you have any other thoughts related to the proposal between now and December, certainly let us know.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Kate. All right. So now moving on, if we can now to follow up on the teaming at the middle school. And Dan, highlighted some questions that he was raising regarding the current model and some ideas about improving on the model. And so he has a little more meat on the bones, not fully baked yet, but certainly much closer. So this is ongoing. And so Dan, can you share your screen? And
yes, I do have it. Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to come back again. So last month I was focusing more on the middle school philosophy and what makes the middle school special and why it's such an effective way to reach students at this developmental level. And I also pointed out that over the years, our adherence to the middle school philosophy has eroded a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that this morning. But our current schedule, as I described it last time, we did modify several years ago to add the 40-minute extended learning time block, which was a huge benefit to roughly 20% of our students. We had 20% of the students on the left-hand column receiving instruction that in the past could not access our full program because they were receiving learning strategies, SRBI services in reading or math, study skills, organization, writing assistance, or the Enrichment and Project Challenge. Those students, like I said last month, weren't able to access art classes or our tech and engineering courses or some of the other PFAs that we offer, the practical and fine arts, in our schedule. What that adjustment did was it it gave 80% of our students an assignment in quiet study, which really is non-instructional time. The teachers are there as a supervisory duty. We found ways to enhance that, but part of the difficulty in terms of even extra help during that time is that not all teachers are available because we have teachers at each grade level who are teaching off team at that time and not available to work with students. So we looked at how we can strengthen the middle school experience for our students. What were the goals? What are we trying to accomplish? And we focused on, first, better meeting the academic needs of 100% of our middle school students, not just the 20%. And looking at our portrait of a graduate that was developed, really tapping into some of those same skills so that when our students get to the high school, they've had some practice in thinking critically, communicating, solving problems, and expressing creativity. We also know that the social emotional needs of middle school students are important, and we wanted to be able to provide students with opportunities, again, using the language from the portrait of a graduate to care for themselves and others. And I think, as Michael Aiken had said, also to tie into our sustainability goals in the building and in the district, how to care for our world. So how can we do that with some of this time? And how can we build a stronger sense of community within the grade level teams and our school as a whole? So when we look at also better meeting the social emotional needs of all of our students, we know that that middle school is a time of transition. It's the transition from the elementary school into secondary education. 6th grade is a big transition point. And at the other end, it's obviously the transition to high school. So we wanted to be able to better meet those needs. A lot of the stuff that has been done up until now has been done sort of piecemeal. Even the developmental guidance lessons, the goal setting, digital citizenship. A lot of the way we've been attacking this is by taking time away from the academic classes and having staff members push in to work with students. For example, maybe during their English class, the counselor would come in over the course of a week to meet with all of the students. But we're trying to find ways to maximize the instructional time and still deliver these important services to all of our students. Some of the ideas that we've come up with on how to build a stronger sense of community include the team-wide community events. Again, those are fairly sporadic right now and are taken out of academic time. Opportunities to highlight student achievement, talents, and contributions. We've done a few things like that in the past where a team might have a team-wide talent show or a demonstration of learning in front of their peers. But we're looking to be able to strengthen that and do that more frequently. We're also looking for some opportunities to build a stronger sense of community through community service opportunities, team-wide participation in our student government food drives, clothing drives like the one that's going on right now for children's coats, letter writing, which we typically do also around this time of year for Veterans Day. Other team building activities can include things like what's in the plans right now for this year is a battle of the books that Helen Knudsen is working on in our library learning commons. And of course, all of the activities that lead up to our Warrior Day celebration at the end of the year, which is a lot of fun for the entire middle school community. And of course, we would continue the team field trips. Once we get beyond COVID, 6th grade traditionally goes to Nature's Classroom in November. 8th grade would traditionally take a trip to Philadelphia, and other grade levels would take trips to museums and other sites around the area, which when you have a pure teaming model, it works so much better because you've got the core set of 4 academic teachers who have all of their students. And again, like I said last month, we currently don't have that. We have it on one of the teams in each grade level, but not on both teams. So our proposal is really to replace that non-instructional time of quiet study with an instructional block of time, which we're referring to as academic workshop. And again, that would be the core academic teachers who would share the same group of students. There would be flexible grouping the way we envision this, and we've looked around at what some of the other middle schools in the area do. Where we are right now is thinking that this could be a flexible grouping where all students would have access to all of their teachers. We would restructure the FTE to allow us to accomplish this with a minimal increase in overall FTE. Some of the ways that we looked at doing this would be moving to a single block of ELA in 6th grade, but longer periods of time. Rather than a 41-minute or 42-minute period in 6th grade, we could offer 54-minute periods to the 4 core academics. And we were looking to also reallocate some of what we currently do in a way that would make more sense for all students. So rather than just having a few students access OST on their schedule or Writing Advantage, this could be a time for all students to do so. And Ken, I'm wondering if I accidentally skipped a slide because I'm thinking, or maybe I just went quickly through some of them.
No, I think you're on track.
Okay, I was just concerned that I wanted to make sure that people understood that what we're doing, what we propose to do, still continues the services that are currently offered. So it's not just what the 20% of the students are currently getting, but allowing 100% of the students to do that. So what it might look like also is every student is assigned, all students are assigned to an academic workshop, but there may be times when most frequently students who are getting learning strategies, for example, may not be in the academic workshop. But if there is a team-wide activity, they would come back to their academic workshop so that they could participate in some of those activities, such as if there's a guest speaker coming, a visiting scientist, a visiting author who's talking to the entire team, or even the grade level that could take place at that time. So one of the things I also
actually, Dan, if you could go back a second.
Sure.
So just to put a little more description related to academic workshop. So students here would be spending time with their teacher, conferencing for writing and reading, correct, Dan?
Yes.
They'd be getting their math support, and I don't mean intervention. I mean
Exactly.
kids just, daily kind of, I've got questions about math. They're going to get some math support from their math teachers. Talk about those kinds of things that don't necessarily happen right now for for all those students. I mean, the kids who get intervention, they're getting that during the ELT right now, but the things that they would be getting during the academic workshop, you talked about study skills, you've talked about a lot of different things. So
yeah, so I guess what I would say is, so that's what we talk about. The beauty of this is it is flexible. So there may be, like the first week, each of the 6th grade teachers would be doing lessons on learning middle school, the transition to middle school, and introducing their students to the key staff members, making sure they're familiar with the building and the lockers and all of that, and knowing who their resources are, and how to access their resources in middle school. But then maybe the next week, they may be working completely differently. They may, the teachers may say, okay, this Friday, for example, all of you get to sign up for extra help with one of the core teachers. So students, based on their need and the teacher guidance, some would go maybe for math help that day. Others would go for writing conferencing that day. And the beauty is it's with their own teacher. And like I said, right now that's not available. And for a lot of middle school students, it's challenging for them to get extra help from their teachers. These are students that don't drive themselves to school. Many of them are involved in activities after school, outside of school. So it's a way really to support their academic growth during during the school day. I have to say also, I've got some teachers, especially the 8th grade, who really were on fire when they started just brainstorming about how they can take some of the themes that occur in 8th grade and build those into interdisciplinary applications of what they're learning in their classes in a way similar to what, if you're familiar with our 6th grade Guardians of the Water Galaxy project, which we've been doing for a while, which is a real, I think, a key example of middle school doing middle school right, where the science teacher, the social studies teacher, and now the English teacher are all collaborating to help provide students with the skills they need to tackle an issue that they get to choose, that they get to identify around water, and they actually research it and propose a solution, and then send that solution out to someone they've identified as a person in a position that might actually be able to make a difference. So building on that and expanding.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
So the problem we're trying to solve is to not have 80% of our kids kind of idle in quiet study time, right? That's the problem we're trying to solve.
Well,
and
partly, yeah.
I mean, we want everyone to have a little bit more deliberate, intentional learning during that time instead of quiet study, something to that effect, right? Mm-hmm. And that, so the academic workshop seems like a viable option because because of its creativity, right? Because of its mm-hmm. flexibility, and you can do what you need. It's a true workshop. And Bernadette, help me here a little bit, but it's a true workshop in that you can offer a whole range of different things that support their core academics. Is it voluntary? Is it mandatory? Right? So are they self-selecting to be there? I think the answer is no.
No.
They must be there.
Okay. Yeah. If you want me to answer that now, yeah. No, everybody would be scheduled. Everybody would be assigned to an academic workshop. Now we will have students that need other services during this time. So they will be getting, like some students will be going, as Dr. Craw alluded to, they'll be going to our math specialist for SRBI math intervention, or they may be going to
who are they deciding they need that, or they're being pulled and saying you need extra help?
They've been our data, and there's multiple data points that have identified them as needing intervention services.
Okay.
And so we talk with their parents and we schedule them in. And again, sometimes those are, it's not a permanent placement.
Right. No, I understand. So in this workshop period block of time, kids will be fanned out based on need, based on, resources that are available to them. If they self-select, will there be any self-selecting? Like if I need extra math help?
Yeah, I think that's where we talk about the flexibility of it. Every student's assigned to one of their core academic teachers for attendance purposes for the workshop.
For that period, right.
But those 4 teachers are going to coordinate. So is there going to be a day this week where we're going to be having students self-select for extra help in different areas, or are the teachers going to divide them on who they need to see for writing, conferencing?
Right.
There also is the idea of, that students can be given the opportunity. This is where I think the 8th grade teachers were really on fire about having some choice of, if they want to pursue something beyond what they've been working on in class and do sort of an enrichment type project. It's almost like a school-wide enrichment where there is choice. And this is an opportunity where students can also leverage the resources of our building. During COVID, I think our library learning commons has been used as a cafeteria during the quiet study periods. So it's limited students in what they can do. I'm happy to say we've accessed the TV studio more now with our morning show announcements. But there's other resources there.
Yeah, what I'm interested in, what I'm not interested in, I'm asking, and I know that Bernadette, I'm pointing to you because I can almost predict that you might have a similar question, and that is the balance between it being flexible workshop, great opportunity for extra enrichment on the teacher's part, as you just described, extra help where on a needs basis, etc. Versus, and balancing that with, the flexibility being balanced with a very intentional curriculum-driven set of goals.
Yes. If I could give an example, Taffy. So our English teachers from that thread, they are going to be conferencing with students on their writing and conferring on their reading, and there'll be certain numbers of times they'll need to be doing that with students to help move their progress along. They obviously have their core class of English, but at times, some of the time that's needed with an individual or small groups, they're going to need to make sure they're working with students purposely, but also allowing that time for a student that, with a particular assignment needs to come see them, or maybe has been, absent, needs to catch up, but allowing that flexibility. Same thing with math. That math teacher, the general support or concepts, if there's a concept that students aren't getting, will be pulling groups. So there does need to be that structured thread through this, which, quite frankly, I think Dan and his team are still working through, and the ability to have some flexibility, some student-driven, empower them to access some of these resources.
And I just think because in light of, and I hate this being our focus, but in light of the data, over the last year, it would just seem crazy to use this block without some intentionality towards raising those numbers and meeting some goals. But I do not want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, there's all kinds of excitement around creativity and flexibility. I get it. Don't throw that away. Anyway, those are mine.
And even I would just say, I see a lot of mini units, which are part of that kind of structured curriculum. Some of them around study skills, some of them around executive functioning. We even talked, I know that Janine Russo, our math CIO, was really excited about the potential with some additional academic time to do some mini units on statistics, which she feels is an area in our math curriculum that we need to boost up a little bit. And it would be taught in conjunction with some of the projects that the students are already doing. Like 7th grade does the population unit. They look at a lot of demographics. And that's a really nice segue where we can link at that time and have the 7th grade math teachers insert some statistics into this time period for the students.
So I think, Dan, in terms of highlighting your next step is flushing out with your teachers the academic workshop, the structured piece, the flexibility, and I think we're trying to just bring the committee up to speed on the thinking and where we are, and then continue to add what I would think is more of like a scope and not like a true curriculum scope and sequence, but the structure to this maybe for the next time.
And how it might look different in each of the grades as well, I think, and how it progresses from grade 6 to grade 8.
Can I just ask a quick?
Yeah, Bernie, you're frozen.
Better now?
Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
I wonder if I stop sharing, do you think that might help free up some bandwidth?
Try.
All right. I don't know. I didn't focus much on this last slide, which just talks about what our projections are and why we think that this is a good move now based on enrollment.
That's okay. We're already in the middle of the move, so it's happening. But we'll come to that next time, Dan.
Okay, let me stop.
Yeah,
Let's see if Bernie's. Bernie, are you there?
I think Bernie.
She's coming in and out.
Yeah, she's coming in and out.
Okay.
And you, Bernie, you might try and just take your video off, and that might free you up a little bit. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I have a quick question while Bernie fixes her tech problems. So, Dan, is there any impact that you foresee? Do the students at that level, adding more to their workload, so to speak, or the time that they're actually getting instruction? Is there any concern that the time that they're sort of doing their quiet study, where they have some freedoms to make their own choices, is adding this additional instruction time? Right?
No, we've talked about that. Because we're worried about the stress level of kids. So we've already said this isn't going. When we first started talking about this, we said, well, what do we offer? Do we offer mini electives? Is it graded or non-graded? And we decided to not move in that direction of giving another graded class. And this is also a time where we can build in some of those, the social emotional learning, some of the mindfulness as well. The flexibility allows the teachers to sort of structure the timeline and adjust to meet the needs of the students in real time. So if we're feeling like they need something just to celebrate the kids and focus on the goals around social emotional well-being and building connections, that's a valid use of this academic time as well. And still providing students with opportunities to get extra help and to use the resources of the library.
And this is, I may have missed it, but this will also go home to the parent to let the parent know, because at that grade level, especially with the math scores and stuff like that, sometimes it's hard to figure out, is the student just somewhat disconnected and that's why the scores aren't good, or is the student struggling and doesn't know where to get the help? So will parents have the opportunity to see what's been recommended, or have their, essentially?
I'm not sure I understand, David. They'll know that well, you're the first ones to know where we are with our thinking right now as the curriculum committee. But yes, we'll share this with the as we move forward. We'll share this also with the parent community. They'll know on their kid's schedule as well what their student is scheduled for, and they'll know if their student is getting the SRBI interventions, which are those students that we have the universal screens like the NWEA, like some of the in-class assessments that we use to identify students who need more intensive work with a specialist, and not just their classroom teacher. And it's usually, it's very structured. It's at tier 2, which is going to be maybe every other day support. Is it tier 3, which would be everyday support. So
I'm going to switch computers. I will be right back. I'm getting kicked out of the room that I'm working in right now. So I will be disconnecting and reconnecting momentarily.
I missed that. Where did he say he was going?
Just reconnecting.
Okay. And Bernie, are you still around?
Yeah, I actually dialed in on the phone.
Okay, great. Did you have a question? And
yeah, I just wanted to take a step back and, we're re-looking at how the quiet period is structured. Are we still confident that that's the best schedule to keep everything the same, but just reorganize the 40-minute or 1 period quiet time?
Actually, thank you, Bernadette. That's a really good question. We've been playing with the schedule. I think last time we spoke, last month, we said we would have to look at the schedule at the same time. So right now, I do have a mock-up of a schedule where actually 6th grade is on a different schedule from 7th and 8th grade with longer periods of time, because they really would only have 4 academic classes, whereas 7th and 8th grade have 5. World language is an everyday academic class in 7th and 8th grade, whereas in 6th grade, it's an every other day class. So it fits the PFA schedule. So that allows 6th grade to have 54 minutes. And then the academic workshop would actually be extended from the 40 minutes to the normal class size. For PFAs, and 6th and 7th and 8th grade would have class periods of 42 minutes. in the schedule.
Okay, and that made more sense than going to a block scheduling across the board for everyone, restarting the schedule from scratch, looking at the best way to kind of do some of these academic learning things could be done in the classroom during the regular period if the period were longer. So we're talking about math enrichment as an option to pull out, but if your math class was longer on a rotating schedule or every single day, you might not need all of these pull-out periods.
So before we had the extended learning time block and every student was scheduled fully for the whole day, we had longer periods. They weren't block schedules, but we're always going to have students that are going to be pulled out, whether it's going to be for learning strategies or SRBI. And our past practice was that they would miss a PFA for that. And we found that that was, when you look at trying to have a schedule where you have access and equity for all, you want to build in some flexibility so that students aren't blocked out of the curriculum. I really thought that was a real positive, so that we didn't have kids, our learning strategies, kids not being able to take art or music or tech and engineering, which was the case prior. And I think if we fully block schedule, that would be a challenge. We did a full schedule review. I want to say it was about 6 years ago. And that's when we made the change to put in the extended learning time block. And we looked at rotating schedules. I think there is, middle schools are always looking for the perfect schedule, and none of us have found it yet. I talked to all of us. We all have something slightly different, and some things are very creative. And just having these conversations with the principals in the neighboring districts, it's interesting. I know Ken was pushing me to try to see if we can find a way, and we're still looking. Can we cycle in a longer block for each of the academics on a weekly basis? Can we figure that out? We're looking. Right now, what I have is a mock-up of a schedule that works with the peer teaming model, with with this change in 6th grade to the way we deliver the ELA curriculum. You raise a good point, and I think you're right that we always need to ask that question: is the way we're dividing the time the best structure to support the goals that we're trying to reach? And here we have, like we said, the academic, the social emotional, and sort of the school climate goals. Yeah.
I think the idea of using the extra period to create more equity amongst the students to make sure that everybody's not missing out on anything is interesting. Is it possible to use this as an advantage to take a step forward? And we have pretty tight restrictions on who qualifies for Project Challenge and some of these gifted programs. Would it be possible, or is it worth considering rolling out some of those restrictions and letting students who want to opt in, now that they have these designated periods of time where it'd be possible to join some of these more enrichment instead of just focusing on remedial work during this time?
No, absolutely. And that's what I was trying to explain when I think Taffy asked her question. There are opportunities I see for some what we call the school-wide enrichment. Beyond those students identified as talented and gifted through the Project Challenge program, there are opportunities for students to take a topic of interest, and it offers them choice, and it gives them opportunities to work with their teachers, to work with the other staff members, such as Helen Knudsen, our library media specialist, to access the maker space, to access the TV studio, to create, to do research, and then to demonstrate what they've learned in a variety of ways. So absolutely, that is how we're looking at this, as an academic block and not just a supervisory study hall where kids go to get intervention that need it. It's instructional time, academic time for 100% of our students during this time. So each student gets what they need.
And I guess my last question is, if we're going to give the students choice what kind of training are we going to do to help the students make good choices during that time? So you might be suffering in a subject and maybe you should go to that extra help, but it's not the subject you want to go to, or my friends are doing an activity, so I'm going to choose that instead. Sixth grade, seventh, eighth, they're still young enough that, what kind of system can we help them use their time to the best of their ability?
Yeah, so that's part of what we're still developing and still working on. And it goes back to that structure with flexibility. So when are the times when all students are going to have a structured lesson, like study skills or developmental guidance lessons? And when is there going to be teacher directed? This is where you're going during this time period. And when will students say, this is where I need to go, or this is what I would like to learn more about? Or this is the project that I'm doing. For example, we said there are projects already like the Guardians of the Water Galaxy, which offer a lot of choice and flexibility. And this would give students some time to continue that independent work that they're doing and accessing the resources here in the middle school to further that investigation or inquiry.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Taffy, you're muted if you're talking. Sorry.
I am talking. Any other, I said, thank you, Bernie. Any other questions from anyone?
Okay, so Taffy, we would come back in December with further updated and actual proposed schedule and so forth that we would look at with this model. Dan's going to do a little more work. Is there a way to look at those blocks in the 7th and 8th grade? I mean, I think Bernie's point, more extended blocks really is something that is desirable. Is that possible given the constraints of program, schedule, contracts, things of that nature, keeping all that in mind. But, I always see a schedule as sort of your cash box, whatever, you want to accomplish each year in terms of your programs, the schedule, you really use it to meet your needs. And so there might be a starting point for next year with this, and then it continues to evolve to support the needs that we see for students. And so it has to be flexible, the schedule, and not just get into okay, we're just going to do the schedule the same way for the next, 15 years when we know, changes in needs are constant. So we want to be in tune with that. But we will come back with further information December, and also the staffing plan that goes along with this, right, Dan? Because you were going to reallocate your staffing to make this work.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And then just a couple quick informational items, Taffy, before you get into the social emotional piece under other curriculum. We have had a professional learning day that was very exciting, invigorating on November 2nd. There were, you could see the full workbook of activities that were going on. There were threads on assessment and grading, differentiation, math, literacy throughout the district, social emotional, a lot of different things. I have to really applaud Matt Phillip and Dan DeVito at the high school under Julie's leadership of really taking a hard look at grading, looking at the data over the past several years. It was helpful for the departments to see the information. And Julie, maybe you could just kind of highlight what that was like, because the discussions and the thought process that went into this, I thought were really important.
So sure, I think you all know, we have a school goal that's focused on assessment this year, and grading, of course, is only one component of a broader umbrella around assessment. And we have, at various times during professional learning opportunities, asked teachers to reflect on their assessment practices and their grading practices. And so this past professional development day, this session was really aimed at looking kind of on a school level and on an individual department level over a period of several years, what the grading distribution has been and sort of the patterns in that. And were there patterns that existed within certain departments? Were there patterns that existed within certain years school-wide? And rather than sort of assigning ideas or notions related to why those patterns existed, asking teachers to reflect on, why do we think that we ended up in this place? Is that something that we want to change? And how do we go about doing that? I don't know that we came to any particular answers as a result of said conversation, but certainly it has moved the needle in terms of thinking about our current practices. So with a clear frame of reference about what teachers do regarding assessment and grading of those assessments, we give them the ability to truly analyze how what they do impacts students in a real way, and to begin to think about, are some changes necessary in terms of what the assessment practices are? Are there changes that are necessary in terms of the way we assign grades to assessments or whether we assign grades to assessments? So a lot of really thoughtful, reflective conversation happening. And, you know, what I can say anecdotally is following those conversations, lots of individual comments through emails, through the survey that we gave, through department level conversation, through curricular partner conversation about people who are making changes at the classroom level and experimenting a little bit with what it is that they're doing in service to students, and truly to start thinking about, how do we bring the feedback component in on what we're doing? Do our grading practices speak to the kind of feedback that we want students to have in terms of where they are and how they get to the next level? So no real answers, no real subscriptions here or prescriptions, but a lot of reflective conversation and a lot of people who are implementing changes within their individual classrooms, which is really exciting to see.
Great. And Dan, just quickly, anything on the differentiation work you're continuing at the middle school? Because I know that you had a big school-wide session, right?
I have to unmute myself. Yeah, we've been, and this has been a focus of our professional development for our building all year. Our PTO actually purchased this book that we're using as a study book. Actually, I have it right here. It's the How to Differentiate Instruction by Carol Ann Tomlinson. The high school started this a couple of years ago, and it led to their assessment piece, which surprisingly, maybe it's not surprisingly, Julie, I should mention this to you. At our last session, the teacher says, yeah, but now we need to start thinking about assessment differently, because that's the natural flow as we have these conversations about how do you differentiate based on student interest, learning profile, content, student readiness, and how choice plays a big part in this as well, offering choices so students aren't always doing the same thing, or most importantly, they're not demonstrating their learning all the same way. And that is already having an impact on teachers and their day-to-day work in the classroom. So it's been a really great book study. We've been following a method where we share out quotes that are meaningful, and we have a little conversation about that, and then we break off into grade level teams, and we've been talking about what we currently do and what are some ways we can build on that moving forward. So it's been a very positive, well-received professional development theme for the year at the middle school.
Great.
Our next, we don't have another full day professional learning day until March, but we do have an early release in December, on December 8th. And so we will, remind families when that day comes so that they know, but the faculty will be here for that full day, engaged in some follow-up work that we have planned. So to be continued. And the last informational item was a follow-up from the last board meeting. There was a request for the AP scores by course and across the 5 levels. So I included that in the packet. And just very quickly, and I do have Julie here, but at our next board meeting, there'll be opportunities if there's any questions about that. We're going to talk about the college outcomes at our next board meeting. The classes of 2020 and 21, if you look and recall, a number of students were able to get refunds last year from the College Board. So in some of these courses, the numbers in terms of the number of students sitting for tests changed. In particular, I believe in the macro and micro, lots of cancellations there, as well as in other areas like some of the languages. If you look at the calculus, I mean, you would never know that there was a pandemic. The 71 kids took those exams, and those numbers were extremely strong as they have been in the past. For human geography was the first year right, Julie, first year of that AP course, where we have the numbers in a 4.27 average above the Connecticut and global averages, which was very strong. So, I mean, those are just some highlights, but Meredith Starzyk will join Julie and me at the board meeting. And if there are further questions, certainly, we can answer those.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
And then we're kind of prepping for December.
So this is
right?
just Bernadette and I met with Lisa at some point. It came up and we discussed it between the two of us. Bernadette, I'm going to turn it over to you, just and really high level brushstroke, broad brushstrokes to tee up a discussion for December. Just your concerns and questions we might ponder between now and December regarding the sort of mental well-being of everyone in the district, but obviously beginning with the students.
Sure. So coming out of the pandemic, in light of everything going on in the country in the past couple of years, it seems like there's increasing numbers of mental well-being issues amongst students and adolescents. And I just think it would be very good for us to do our due diligence to make sure that we are properly tracking how our students are doing. I know it's a difficult thing to measure, but looking at creative ways to make sure we're capturing that pulse, and then how we're using our resources in schools effectively to make sure that we are A, having enough resources, and B, maximizing the way that those resources are reaching. So if we could start a discussion a little bit about what we're tracking in terms of mental well-being, school climate, and is there room to do that tracking better? And are we doing what we want to do with those goals? Because if we're not really on top of how we're doing, how can we make sure we're doing okay, but always improving and doing better?
Right. Okay.
Any questions around sort of the parameters of that discussion? We don't have to have solutions proposed now, but I mean, is there data, Bernie, that we want to at least forward on? I'm sure, Tracy and her team are well aware, but if there's anything else we want to forward on.
I know that we capture things like number of students suspended, but I'm wondering what other data beyond that we are tracking, and, really starting a discussion of, are there other things we should be tracking, other data points that would give us insight to how the students are doing? Are we looking at, number of bullying incidents that are reported, the number of bullying incidents that turn out that have actions upon, that have been, identified and that we are doing something about? Are we looking at number of students who were referred to counseling, and do we have enough counselors to meet them? Do we see change?
Yeah, do we have data on absenteeism and the reasons for those absentees, right? Like we actually have to be able to say to families, if your child is staying home not because they have a fever, but because they need a mental health day, we want to know that. and that it's not a bad thing. We want to be able to track that. Because it just allows us to support the kids better when they can return. Carry on. You were listing other data points, Bernie.
Those are just some ideas off the top of my head, but I think we could have a whole discussion about exactly which data points we think are the most indicative and the best way to track those over time.
I wanted to add one thing. So I think it's really critically important that before we start asking to collect data, we let the parents know why we're collecting the data and what the intended outcome of the data collection is, because I think that's one of the areas that raises concerns among some parents. We collect data, we don't say why we're collecting the data, we don't tell parents what the questions may be or what the intended outcome is.
Yeah, I don't think we lead with data collection. I think we lead with, precisely as Bernie said, we're concerned with the whole health of our student body, and that learning can't happen when you're hungry, and learning can't happen when you're anxious, and learning can't happen when you're sad. And so our goal is to make sure that our children are getting all the supports they need in order to be successful. And
but I think we also need to make sure that that we share with parents ahead of time what the questions may be, or what the go ahead.
Dave, if I could just jump in, because some of this data is data that we collect every year and are required to report to the state. Attendance, suspensions, bullying incidents, all that is kept. That's internal data that is aggregated, and then that's readily available. It's part of our system. We have a student privacy policy that any time that we survey students, we are to make a survey available to notify families and make the survey available ahead of it being administered if someone wants to inspect it. So there is always that. If we were ever doing a survey, we do have survey at the middle and high school upcoming that will get into some academic, drug and alcohol kinds of questions. I know some notifications have gone out about that. That is a process when we have surveys. And if Tracy and her team want to access some of the existing data like attendance and so forth that we've mentioned, those things are just kind of readily available data points. But if we're asking specific questions, of course, parents will be notified that would be happening and what the purpose is and so forth. That's by board policy and by practice. And I think that's definitely a good point.
Right, but proactively, I think my concern as a parent and now somebody who can potentially help, make some changes, is that I feel strongly that surveys should just be sent to all of the parents. The concept of saying you may make an appointment to come in and review the survey, I don't think it sends the right message. So I think, and this might not be the perfect forum to talk about it, but I agree as far as the data we already have, absences, late, stuff like that, that data could be aggregated to kind of paint the picture and help make sure that, our students are getting the support that they need, especially coming off the pandemic. But when we start to look for more information, maybe to complete the puzzle or dive deeper into what those data points are, I think as a policy, we should be sending out these surveys ahead of time to all the parents and say, this is the survey that we are going to ask your student to take, and this is the expected outcome, or this is what we intend to look at with the data.
I think we can, probably the venue for this would be under policy, looking at the, student privacy policy. Some instruments are proprietary and we're not allowed to, if it's developed by third-party organizations. I mean, we're getting way off topic now, but I think if we were to come back to, having Tracy and her team coming in December and, talking about the social emotional, what information is she currently looking at? What patterns are we seeing? What information is necessary to obtain? And I'm not even sure whether, that's through survey or not. But I think this other question, David, you're flagging may be within that discussion in December, or even maybe it's connected to policy, and we give Melissa a heads up, right? Because I think that is a valid concern.
I mean, I don't know that we want to bog it down in policy. I got to tell you, I don't think that's where Bernie and I were headed. I think it's really about the now. And I think that I don't think we even need to discuss it further, because Tracy is going to enlighten us. But we need to, David, your point is well taken, that we have to do, all of our data collection properly, which I'm guessing at this point is done properly. But if we're moving into new directions to dig down a little deeper and explore, the mental well-being of the kids during this unprecedented time, we obviously have to do it appropriately and legally and all of that, ethically correctly. But I think for this time, we just can to you, and I'm sorry that Lisa's not here, but Julie, I mean, I think, and Dan, you can certainly, and I think the other administrators should probably be in this discussion as well in December, and that we ought to just ask simple questions. Are we collecting all the data we need in order to make a real conclusion about the mental well-being of our children? And if we're not, what should we introduce? And if we have all the data we need, what are we doing to address the findings and share and involve the families in those findings and those solutions? So that's really what we were talking about, because, it's not the mental health and the academic goals are absolutely inextricably linked.
Right. So I think our agenda for December is forming. We have look at the social emotional as you've identified here. We also have Dan coming back for a brief update on teaming and any new course proposal that may emerge. Does that make sense for December?
Yeah.
With the focus being on the social emotional.
I mean, it can be both. Yeah. I mean, we'll again, it's a process. So I don't think we're going to, address and resolve everything in December. But I think this is something that Bernadette has quite wisely brought up, that if we don't actually turn toward it and give it our full attention, we just need to know what's happening already and what needs to be added on.
Right. Okay.
Bernie, did you want to close up on that, or is everything? Does that sound right to you?
No, that sounds really good. I think figuring out where we're at is the first step, right?
Yeah.
What we have collected and where we stand, and then we can decide from there.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And did we have approval on the minutes from last month? Any questions or changes on the minutes? Nope. Okay. Do I need to move to approve those? I never remember that.
Yes.
Yes. Move to approve the November curriculum committee meeting minutes.
October.
What are we now? Oh, November. October.
Second.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you notice the leaves are still on the trees. It's November.
That's remarkable.
Oh my gosh, it's been so warm.
I've got snow peas and arugula in my garden right now. It's
Oh, I'm
November
coming
now.
over.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
All
good
right,
day.
thanks, David.